woods, there was a house that sat at the edge of a cliff. The locals knew the house well and avoided it like the plague, for they had heard the rumors and the stories about the family that had lived there many years ago. They had been a wealthy family with a son and a daughter who had been inseparable until one day the daughter had vanished without a trace. The son had been inconsolable, and after a few weeks he too had disappeared, leaving behind a note that said, "I will find my sister, no matter what it takes." The search for the siblings had been futile, and eventually the house had been abandoned, left to crumble into disrepair. Years had passed, and the house had become a place of legend. Children dared each other to sneak into the abandoned property, but none ever did, for they were too scared of what they might find. But one summer, a group of teenagers had come to the town for a weekend of adventure. They had heard the rumors of the abandoned house and had decided to explore it. The group consisted of 4 friends, Alice, Tom, Rachel, and Mark. They had heard the rumors, but they hadn't believed them. They laughed and joked as they climbed up the hill towards the house. The sun was setting and the light was fading fast, but the 4 friends were determined to explore the house before nightfall. As they approached the house, they could see that it was indeed abandoned. The roof was caved in and the windows were shattered. The garden was overgrown with weeds and the front door hung on its hinges. The 4 friends made their way inside, and it was as if the house had been frozen in time. Everything was covered in dust and the furniture was draped in cobwebs. As they made their way through the rooms, they could feel a sense of unease creeping upon them. The air felt heavy and the silence was deafening. Alice, who had been leading the way, suddenly stopped. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. The others shook their heads, but then they heard it too. It was a faint whisper, and it seemed to be coming from the room at the end of the hallway. They approached the room cautiously, and as they entered, they could feel a chill in the air. The room was empty except for a large wardrobe in the corner. It was old and covered in dust, but there was something strange about it. Tom stepped forward and opened the wardrobe door, and what he saw made him scream. Inside the wardrobe was the mummified body of a girl, and beside her was a note that read, "I found my sister." The 4 friends were frozen in terror, and they turned to run, but they found that the door had been locked from the outside. They were trapped, and the sound of footsteps echoed through the empty house. As they huddled together, they could see his shadow moving towards them. It was the son who had returned to the house after all these years, still searching for his sister. He had found her, and now he wanted to keep her close. The 4 friends screamed as the son approached, his eyes filled with madness. They knew that they were about to become the next victims of the house on the cliff. The son, now an old man, had been living alone in the woods for decades. He had been driven mad by the loss of his sister and had become obsessed with finding her. When he had discovered her mummified body, he had brought it back to the house and had kept it with him ever since. Now, as the 4 friends huddled together, he advanced on them, a crazed look in his eyes. They could see that he was holding something in his hand, and as he got closer, they realized that it was a knife. They tried to reason with him, to plead with him to let them go, but he was beyond reason. He had become a shell of a man, consumed by grief and madness. He raised the knife and lunged towards them, and the 4 friends scrambled to get out of the way. In the chaos that ensued, Rachel managed to find a window and smash it with a nearby vase. She crawled out onto the roof, followed closely by Mark and Tom. Alice was close behind, but the son grabbed her ankle and pulled her back inside. The 3 friends on the roof could hear her screams as they ran down the hill towards the town. They were shaking with fear and disbelief, but they knew that they had to warn the authorities. They burst into the sheriff's office, panting and out of breath. They told the sheriff everything that had happened, but he was skeptical. He had heard the rumors about the house on the cliff before, and he thought that the teenagers were just trying to scare him. But when he saw the terror in their eyes, he knew that something was wrong. He organized a search party, and they made their way up to the house on the cliff. They found Alice's body inside, and the son was nowhere to be found. The search party combed the woods for days, but they never found the son. Some say that he is still out there, wandering the woods, driven mad by grief and the loss of his sister. Others say that he is nothing more than a legend, a cautionary tale for those who dare to explore the abandoned house on the cliff. But the locals know better. They avoid the house and warn their children never to go near it. They know that the son may still be out there waiting for his next victim to come along. And they know that the house on the cliff is a place of darkness and terror, a place where the past and the present collide in a nightmare of horror.